Hey family, welcome back to the Nona Jones Show. Listen, this show for me is going to be really, really special because it's not like any of the other shows that I have done. I don't have any guests, I don't have any scripts. It's just me and real talk. What I want to do today is I want to do a bit of a life update and a bit of a reintroduction of who I am. I want you to get to know me a little bit better, but if I'm being really, really honest, this episode is more so about me reintroducing myself to me. You see, I recently made a really, really big decision. I have spent the last about 20 years in corporate executive roles for some of the world's largest companies, but I recently decided to step away from that and follow God into full-time entrepreneurship and ministry. And I'm going to tell y'all, it has been quite the journey. Now, I know I'm not alone in this because according to a 2023 McKinsey report, it says nearly 70% of Americans, that's 7 out of 10, say that they have considered leaving their jobs to pursue more meaningful work. And every year in the United States of America, there are more than 5 million new business applications. And so what that tells me is it tells me that people are hungry for purpose over paychecks, and they want calling over comfort. And so today, I want to basically give you a behind the scenes look at my decision. I want to walk you through what I have learned so far, as well as what I'm still figuring out. And I will also give you a sneak peek at what I believe God is calling me to next. And so whether you are thinking that this is a time for you to also do your own transition, or maybe you're just wanting to discern what next looks like for you, I believe that this conversation is going to remind you that you are not wrong for wanting more. So let's get into the conversation. Hey y'all, real quick, I want to make sure that you know that if you enjoy my content, if you enjoy this podcast, if you even enjoy what I share on social media or in my e-newsletters, you need to become part of my Patreon community. My Patreon community is an exclusive community that will give you access to even more content that I make available publicly. You'll get early access to my podcasts on at least a monthly basis. I'm hosting a live Q&A to recap the conversations that I'm having, and you can join at different membership tiers depending on your budget, all right? So I want you to consider joining my Patreon community because I would love to connect with you in a deeper way. All right, now back to the conversation because it's going to be good. So let me first give you a little bit of context because I know that sometimes social media can make it seem like everybody is just balling out. Everyone's having a great time. But let me tell you a little something. So for me, this has not been the easiest season of my life. Okay, I don't care what it looks like. This has not been the easiest season of my life, y'all. There have been tears, plenty of fears. There have been late nights. There have been early mornings. But I will also tell you that as I reflected back over the last about half year since I've made this decision, there has also been a tremendous amount of clarity and joy and a level of peace that I have never experienced before in my life. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just walk through a series of questions that I think will help you get a little bit more insight into where I'm at and what I've been processing through, in hopes that it will also maybe speak to your situation or the situation of a family or friend, family member or friend who might also be going through this. So I want to kind of start at the beginning and give you a little bit of understanding about my career journey and what led me to the place of God calling me out of corporate America. So I started my career as what I would consider to be kind of like a mid-entry level management role. Now, I did not have any direct reports, but I was in the type of role where I was responsible for other people's work, essentially for the quality of their work. And I got into that role when I was about, I don't know, 21, 22. I was like fresh out of college. Well, a year into that role, I had the incredible fortune, the incredible privilege of getting appointed to a leadership role that was actually an executive level role. It was on the regional leadership team of a really large corporation. And I was, in these high level executive meetings, talking about reports that I didn't even know what the acronyms or numbers stood for. I remember being in those meetings and just being completely overwhelmed because I was working alongside of people who had been in the company for their entire career. And these are people who were old enough to be my parents, okay? And so I'd be sitting in these meetings, had no idea what these reports meant, didn't know what a P&L was, had no idea what we were looking at. But my ignorance did not slow the team down. Like they were not willing to slow down just because I didn't know what was going on. And as a matter of fact, I didn't tell them I didn't know what was going on. I had at least enough foresight to not do that. But what I did do is I found a woman. She wasn't on the executive team, but she had been with the company a long time. I found a woman who I really respected. She was brilliant. And I simply asked her if she would be willing to kind of tell me what the acronyms meant. But she did something even better. She said, okay, here's what I want you to do. Go to the library, pick up a couple books on business, read those books, come back to me and tell me what you learned. And then I'll go over these reports with you. And so I did that. And I was so just enamored with business and leadership after I read those books that when I came to her, I was literally on fire about the business. And so she went over the reports with me, went over everything. But that lit a fire within me such that I decided to go back and get my MBA. So I go back to business school, I get my MBA. As a part of that, I think by then I was maybe, 24, 25. At that point, I was actually recruited to another executive role at the utility company that serves my region. Was recruited to that role, loved what I did there. My career kind of ended up on a very steady upward trajectory, like up and to the right type of thing. Got recruited into that role, served there for a few years, and I got recruited into my first C-level executive role for a really large nonprofit organization. And I was very young, but I loved the challenge of the job because it was leading functions that I had never led before. It was building infrastructure that I had never built before. And so I did that. After that, I got recruited to the company formerly known as Facebook, now known as Meta, into a role that had global scope and was it was just a wonderful opportunity. I mean, it was kind of a once in a lifetime type of opportunity. So I got recruited into that. And the thing you need to know is the average tenure at the company at that time was 18 months. Okay. I was at the company almost 6 years. And at my 5th anniversary with the company, I had sensed probably the year before my 5th anniversary, I sensed that transition was coming. Like I started to feel a bit unsettled. And some of that was because, we changed the name of the company. We changed it from Facebook to Meta. The focus of the company started to shift away from making the world a better place and, really helping people build meaningful connections to making money. And let me be very clear. Businesses are not in the business of being broke. All right. Businesses exist to be profitable, to make money. That said, I think one of the things that really, really drew me to Facebook, to Meta, to the work that we were doing is that there was just this sense of optimism. There was truly this tangible sense that the work that we are doing is either making the world a better place or it is premised on the goal of making the world a better place. And as I approached my 5th anniversary, again, the name had changed. I think the focus of the company had changed. The culture within the company had changed adversely, significantly. When I joined the company and for the first maybe, 4 years of my tenure, I would say that there was competition within the company, but it was healthy competition. It was the kind of competition where you want your colleague to be better and to do better. You want your teams to be better and do better. If you are partner teams, you want each team to win. Well, by my 5th anniversary, there was this sense of toxic competition where individuals and teams felt that in order to win, somebody else had to lose. And so it came from, undermining one another, fighting over resources, being duplicitous, just things like that. And here's the thing, like, I so admired my colleagues. I'm talking about brilliant people, all right? Brilliant people. But the culture changed, what I would say, for the worse. And so around my 5th anniversary, I had been praying, and I said, Lord, I want to bring all that I've done, all that I've built, I want to bring it to your kingdom. I really want to do this work. I want to do it for the kingdom. Well, fast forward maybe 3 months later, myself and executives from around the world, we get pulled into a Zoom meeting. And we're basically told in that meeting that the next day we're going to get an email telling us who on our team has been laid off, which, as you can imagine, was absolutely jarring. I had no inclination whatsoever that this was coming down the pike, had no conversations with anybody about it. I was not asked to stack rank my team. And so this truly threw me for a loop. Now, I remember a couple of days before this all happened, I did see some news reports online that said, Meta is going to have layoffs. Now, when I saw that, I reached out to my communications colleagues to be like, hey, I just saw this article. Like, is this true? Radio silence. Nobody says a word. Nobody says anything. My own boss, not saying anything, right? And so I think after all that went down, I just knew. I was like, okay, this feels like the jumping off point, right? And so reached out to a friend of mine who is also founder of YouVersion, the Bible app. If you don't have the Bible app on your phone, get it, because it is a wonderful tool for spiritual growth and development. I reached out to him and I just said, hey, listen, I love your mission. I know that my time here at Meta is coming to a close. I said, but if there's anything I can do to serve, what you're trying to do, please let me know. I care about technology. I care about the church, and I love what you're doing. So through a series of conversations with him over the course of a couple of months, he creates this role, Chief Content and Partnerships Officer. I joined the team at YouVersion and loved what I was doing. I loved my team. I loved our work. I loved the mission. Like, I literally woke up every single day just like, let's go. Like, let's run through walls. That's how I felt. But I would say maybe not even a full year into that role, I knew that I was coming up to a bit of a fork in the road, because between probably, maybe 2018 and 2022, the Lord kind of started to build a ministry for me. Mind you, it is not something that I built. I want to be very clear. The Lord started to open doors for me to speak at conferences and events, whether it was business and leadership, or maybe it was a church conference or women's conference or whatever, technology conferences. And every time he would open a door for me, I would go, I would speak, I would do the thing, and then I would start to get more invitations. And I ended up, I would say by probably 2022, I ended up with what I actually could say, looking back on it, I ended up with multiple full-time jobs because, I had a full-time job in terms of my actual work, at Meta. But then I also was spending like multiple evenings and weekends every single month, speaking and or preaching at different conferences and events. And so I was very, 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 very busy. And then when I joined the team at YouVersion, similar, and probably even more so at that point, because, I was, I guess, somewhat known, not at all famous or anything, but somewhat known in circles. And so I was getting invited to speak at things. And at the same time, during the day, I'm like leading this global team while I'm also at the same time, evenings and weekends, having to go and speak and all of that. Now, mind you, I'm also a mom. I'm also a wife, right? Like, I'm also first lady of a church. And at that point, I also was an author. So I was writing books and just very, very busy. And then I got into a conversation with my then boss at YouVersion, and we were kind of talking about the situation. And he essentially asked me to consider, what is it that I thought I really wanted to like throw everything behind, right? Like throw all my time, all my energy behind. Was it YouVersion or was it ministry? So it's kind of like coming to that fork in the road. And I had to really, really pray about that. I had to really pray about that because in my ideal scenario, I would just do both. Right? I would just do both, and I would serve the Lord through this tech company during the day. I would serve the Lord in the pulpit, in the evening or on the weekends. But as I prayed about it, I got really, really clear that God was calling me away from leadership within an organization. And he was calling me into the ministry that he had built for me. But I also knew that as he was calling me into the ministry that he had built for me, I knew that didn't come with a steady paycheck. Can we just be honest? The decision that was kind of placed in front of me was, okay, I could stay at YouVersion. I know the job. I love the team. I love the mission, steady paycheck. Right? I could stay at YouVersion and completely forsake the ministry that God built through me. I had nothing to do with that. I could do that. Or I could go headfirst into the ministry that God built for me. Not a steady paycheck, not the team that I needed. Like I needed a much bigger team if I was going to do that. But I would have to forsake YouVersion because those were the options I had, right? I couldn't do both. I had to pick one. Well, as I prayed about it, it was very clear that God was calling me to choose the ministry that he had built. And I got to be honest. So the very first question that popped into my mind when I got that level of clarity and confidence, the first question that popped into my mind actually wasn't, where is the money going to come from? The first question that popped into my mind was, well, if I'm not an executive, what am I? Like the question that immediately rose up in me when I was confronted with stepping away from this, C-level type of role, it wasn't, how am I going to take care of my family? It was, if I'm not an executive, what am I? Which let me know that when God called me away from that, it was so much bigger than just calling me away from a job. God was actually calling me away from a malformed identity. I had no idea until that moment. I had no idea that I had somehow wound my identity, my sense of self. I had somehow wound my identity around my job title, my organization, where I was on the org chart, who I knew, my proximity to power and or influence. I had no idea that any of that was in the background of my life or my choices, but it was in that moment that God really surfaced that for me. And I had to start to wrestle with, I had to start to interrogate, where did that come from? How did that happen? Because I truly thought of myself as a woman of faith. I thought of myself as a woman who knew who I was in Jesus, right? Like I identify as a disciple of Christ. So therefore, none of this other stuff matters. Well, turns out it did matter. And the other thing that I realized, in God calling me out of corporate America, calling me out of corporate leadership, was that my faith up until that moment, what I had been calling faith in God, was actually faith in me. I didn't know that because, I was making great money, traveling the world, had access to all types of resources, and I did not know that my faith was in my abilities, that my faith was in my resources, until I was in a situation where I now don't have the resources I had. I now don't have access to the things that I had. That's when I had to begin to confront the fact that what I had been calling faith in God was actually faith in me. And I think if we're honest, part of what kind of keeps us paralyzed and keeps us in situations that God is calling us out of is because in order to follow the voice of God, we have to have faith in him. God is not ever going to call you down a path that is fully illuminated. God is never going to call you into a situation where all of the questions are answered, where the blueprint is provided, where the map is clear. God is going to call you into a situation where he gives you one step. He's going to say, obey me in this huge thing, leave, submit your resignation. But God, what next? That's how God responds. He's like, and so I feel like what made it, because it wasn't hard for me to walk away, but what made it challenging for me to walk away is that I realized I wasn't just walking away from a job. I was walking away from identity that I didn't even know I had. I didn't even know I had. But what gave me the courage to say yes to that unknown, what gave me the courage to say yes to essentially forsaking that malformed identity is I know the voice of God. I've actually known the voice of God since before I was a disciple of Jesus. And I didn't even know that I knew the voice of God until I became a disciple of Jesus. And I'll tell you how I know. So I did not grow up in a Christian home. I did not grow up in church. Was a very dysfunctional situation. My father passed shortly before my second birthday. I experienced a lot of abuse of all types at the hands of my mom and her boyfriend. But I, as an only child, I was essentially, living in this situation where I couldn't control it. But I look back on it and I think, oh my gosh, I tried to end my life twice. But it was not only the grace of God that protected me and saved me, it was also the voice of God that kept me sane through it all. I should have lost my mind. When I think about the things that I experienced at that young age, man, I should have lost my mind. It was the grace of God. It was the voice of God. It was the encouragement of God. It was the peace of God speaking over me, giving me a vision for my future. And so, even now, I know the voice of God. Because I knew him then, I know him now, I know his voice now. So I was able to say yes because I knew it was God that was calling me out into that unknown. That said, there have been some fears that surfaced throughout this process, and I want to kind of invite you into that. So in 2023, I got the sense, now mind you, this is when I was on the team at YouVersion. I got the sense that the Lord wanted me to host a retreat for high capacity women. These are women who are in leadership roles, whether it's in the marketplace or in ministry, women who are entrepreneurs. Like, God wanted me to create a space to essentially minister to the hearts and minds of women like me. Hey, listen, I'm inserting myself in this conversation for just a minute because if you're enjoying this conversation and if you enjoy the many conversations that I host through my podcast, I want to invite you to join me for my free virtual masterclass, How to Bounce Back Better. My mission in life is to help you and people like you discover the power within you to not just go through stuff, not just survive, but I want you to learn how to grow through stuff, how to thrive. How to Bounce Back Better is an hour-long virtual masterclass, and I offer multiple sessions every single week. If you want to register, all you have to do is head over to nonajones.com, and you will see a big link, a big button that says free masterclass. Just click the button, and you can sign up today. I want to see you in the next masterclass because I promise you there are tools, tactics, strategies, and tips that have helped me build resilience that I want to give to you. So again, head over to nonajones.com to click the big free masterclass button and get signed up today. All right, now back to the conversation. I got that sense, and I knew that that's kind of something he wanted me to do, but it wasn't until after I stepped off the team that I actually decided to start researching venues to host this retreat. And so, I find the venue. I actually ended up visiting the venue before I even knew it was the venue. But when I walked in and I was on the property, I felt the peace of God and said, this is the place. So I, move forward. I reach out to the sales team and I'm, talking to them about like my vision and all of that stuff. And so they come back to me with a proposal to host the event and how much it's going to be. And then they tell me how much the deposit is. And y'all, I was like, God, I know you said this is where it's supposed to be, but this is a lot of money. This is a whole lot of money. And then I started to do the calculations, and I realized that in order to host this event, I would need to charge people a couple $1,000s to have this thing. And I was like, there is no way somebody's going to pay for this. Like, there's just no way, because people are used to paying, $50, $80, maybe $100 for a conference. Ain't nobody paying $2,500, $3,000 for an event, especially something from me. It's like, who am I, right? But the Lord was so clear to do it. He said, trust me. So anyway, I put this deposit down. Mind you, this is literally by faith. Put this deposit down. And within, let me see, 6 months, the retreat sells out. Now, here's the thing you need to know. I had done a survey of people. Like, I sent it to my email list, and I was like, hey, if I was to do this thing, would you register? And I said this thing, and I did it even before I paid the deposit, right? And all these people were like, yes, I will do it, da da da. So I paid this deposit, y'all, and the deposit was like, I don't know, $52,000, okay? I pay this deposit. And this is cash, because another thing about me is like, I don't do debt and credit cards and carrying all that stuff over. No. So I pay this thing, right? And I reach back out to the people who are like, hey, if you do this, I'm there. I reach back out to them. Ain't nobody registered. Ain't nobody registered. And this was like, let's see, I paid the deposit in July of 2023. I send the email to everybody in like August of 2023. So I'm like, all right, y'all, the deposit's paid. This is what we're doing. This is how much it is. Y'all, between August and I think maybe November, I think maybe I got like 4 people to register. Mind you, I needed like 100 to pay this thing off. I think I had like 4. And so, but again, God was like, trust me, trust me, trust me. So another deposit comes up, and I'm like, okay, Lord, this is another $50-something thousand. Another deposit comes up. I have to pay that out of my own money again. But within the next month and a half, this was by the end of January, sold out. And I had to open up some other levels of registration because all the rooms were gone. I had to open up some other levels of registration for people who wanted to come. And I think in that, the Lord was really just trying to show me, like, look, if you obey my voice, I will always make provision for my vision. Now that's the key. God will make provision for his vision. The question is God going to make provision for your vision? I don't know, but he will always make provision for his vision. That's why you got to be very, very clear that you're hearing the voice of God. And I have another podcast episode that actually talks about how to hear the voice of God. I highly recommend that you check out that episode. So I remember, we get to the retreat. I'm hosting the retreat. And I'm standing on the stage. I'm looking out into this room that is filled with these beautiful, brilliant, accomplished women from all around the world. Y'all, I still don't know how many of those people found out about the retreat. I still don't know. I still don't to this day. But I'm looking out in this room, and as I'm standing on the stage, okay, I hear the voice of God tell me, like, this is what I've called you to do. This is who I've called you to serve. Everything that you've done, everything that you've built, everything that you've learned is for this group. And I leave the retreat. Mind you, I went into the retreat with no expectations. Like, I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to do this thing because God said to do it. I left the retreat in awe of God. And I left there absolutely convinced that I have been called to serve high capacity women leaders in marketplace and ministry, and to help them get to a place of healing, wholeness, and fulfillment in their lives, in their careers, in their purpose. So I'm clear on that, right? So I leave out of there and feeling good. Everything's great. And then fast forward maybe 2 months, I get a call from a woman who I had been connected with on Instagram, and she is brilliant. This woman does corporate licensing training and all of that. I didn't know any of that, but we start talking and we're just getting to know each other. Okay. And she just mentions to me, she's like, I see that you have a lot of content. You do a lot of speaking. I think you could actually add essentially another plank to your business by way of corporate licensing. And so she begins to explain corporate licensing to me. And I was like, oh yeah, I think I could do that, because I even have curriculum that I've developed around trauma-informed leadership. And so she starts to tell me a little bit more about, what's required and how to do it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I leave the call and I start to write down the names of individuals that I know working at large companies who could potentially be inroads to discuss a corporate licensing partnership with these large companies. Now, I reach out to one particular woman, and she works at Amazon. And I share with her what I'm thinking to do, because by this point, I come out of the retreat. I hear the Lord actually tells me to incorporate a new company. The retreat's called the Success from the Inside Out Retreat. Depending on when you're watching this, you can head over to insideoutleadership.com/events and register for my next retreat. But it's called the Success from the Inside Out Retreat. I leave the retreat. God speaks to me to incorporate a new organization called Inside Out Leadership. Okay. So I reach out to these, contacts I have about Inside Out Leadership, my company, how I can do various, curriculum and programs that are designed to help women in the company get to a place of healing and wholeness so they can drive profitability and they can drive impact for the organization. And the contact I had at Amazon was just like, yes, this is exactly what we need. This is exactly what we've been looking for. And so I reached back out to the woman who I had talked to at Instagram, and I tell her about this conversation. And she tells me, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Because I'm like, look, we got to do a deep dive. Like, I need to know everything there is to know about corporate licensing, because this thing is moving right along with Amazon. And I need to make sure that I have all my buttons, tightened up. And so my team and I, we go to Atlanta. We're sitting down with this woman. We get, all this information, and it's amazing. And then fast forward about a month, the woman and I at Amazon, we're having conversations. We're like tightening everything up around this proposal. It's going to be a very large contract. And we get to the place where she tells me, look, the only thing that we need to do now is we need to get you signed up as an Amazon vendor. And then from there, we can move into legal. And then from there, we'll get the financing. And then we're like, boom, 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 we're done, right? So I'm super excited. She goes off for vacation for like a week. We're supposed to talk when she gets back. I'm giving you all this story because you have to understand when the question is where my fears have come from, I'm giving you this backstory for a reason. So she goes on vacation for a week. She's supposed to come back. We're supposed to meet. I have the meeting on my calendar. I join the meeting. She's not there, which is highly unusual. Usually she beats me to the meeting, but she's not there. And so, I text her and I'm like, hey, I'm on the call. Are you okay? Don't get a response. And I was like, oof, okay. I hope she's all right. Again, totally not like her. She's very, very dependable, very, very timely. A couple days goes by and I reach out to her again. Hey, are you okay? And I don't hear back again. And I'm like, okay, something is definitely wrong, because this is not how she normally is. Fast forward about a month. Haven't heard anything from her. And I'm just like, at this point, because you have to understand, at this point, I'm literally like, I'm off YouVersion's payroll. I'm on nobody's payroll. So this is my business. This is my income. This is my livelihood. This is my family. Don't hear anything. And I'm just like, okay, Lord, I don't know what you're doing, because you called me away from this organization. I've been heading down the pike with this large company and this contract that would take care of me and my family and my team and all this stuff. And all of a sudden we get down to the wire and this person literally disappears. God, what are you doing? In the midst of this, I continue to get invited to speak at things. In the midst of this, I continue to have, income coming in from some different sources. So, we're okay, but this thing that I had been counting on isn't coming to pass, right? And so maybe like 2.5 months into this, I get a text from her saying that she essentially had to take medical leave. She ended up having to go undergo chemotherapy, just horrific situation, right? And of course, I go into prayer for her, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that whole serious thing had happened. So there's that piece. Then I think, as you all know, the political winds kind of changed, and there was this kind of opposition to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in corporate America. Well, a huge benefactor of DEI programs are women. Programs that are specifically designed to serve women in corporations, because women tend to be a minority in organizations. And so there will be programs that are set up to help women succeed in male-dominated environments. Well, Inside Out Leadership, serving women leaders, now you don't really align with companies that are like, nope, we're not serving women anymore. We're not doing DEI anymore. So I get all these kind of headwinds. The thing with, Amazon, that kind of like fell apart. Then the political winds change, and this whole thing is now falling apart. And I got to a place where I was not sleeping. I was not sleeping. My mind was racing. How am I going to, pay for my family's livelihood? Like how, my husband, he's a pastor, and he has his own, business. But for so many years, I had been making like the lion's share of the money, and really our lifestyle was built around my income, because here's the thing you have to know. My husband would be totally fine if we lived in just like a little regular house, on the side of the road. He would be totally fine. I'm the one who I like nice things. I don't mind working hard to get nice things. And so I was like, okay, this is the lifestyle that I've wanted for my family. And so how in the world am I going to take care of it? And my fear raised up in me, because the truth is, as I said earlier, I didn't know it, but what I had been calling faith in God was actually faith in me. I saw all the pieces falling apart, and I was so concerned because I couldn't control it. And so one day, y'all, I went before the Lord. I was angry. I was hurt. And to be perfectly honest, I felt a bit humiliated, because it's like I've had this amazing career working for these prestigious organizations, big title, nice compensation, influential. And Lord, you mean to tell me that you had me step away from all of that to not know how we're going to pay our bills? You had me step away from that in order for me to be around here worried about where money's going to come from? And y'all, let me tell you how amazing God is. So in the midst of that, anxiety, anger, discouragement, I go before the Lord. I'm just basically telling him how I feel. In the midst of all of that, I was reading through the book of Psalms, and I got to the 25th Psalm. We all know the 23rd Psalm, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Thy rod, thy staff comfort me, et cetera, et cetera. Psalm 25 says, in you, Lord my God, I put my trust. I trust in you. Do not let me be put to shame, nor let my enemies triumph over me. No one who hopes in you will ever be put to shame, but shame will come on those who are treacherous without cause. Show me your ways, Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me, for you are God, my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. I'm not going to read this entire psalm, but I got to tell you, the Lord is so gracious, because in the depth of my despair and the depth of my anxiety, he spoke to me out of his word and told me to speak this word over myself every single day until I believed it. And what I started to do from that day forward is every day I would literally pray Psalm 25, the first verse all the way down to verse 22. I would read it over myself because it built up my faith. It built up my hope. And I want to draw your attention to verse 3, because remember I said, part of what was beneath my anxiety, and I only know this now because I've actually excavated what was beneath my anxiety, which I think is a really important practice to do, is not just to stop at feeling anxious, but to really ask, where is this coming from? Why do I feel this way? Verse 3 says, no one who hopes in you will ever be put to shame. I was anxious because I was afraid of being humiliated. I was afraid of losing everything. I was afraid of the things that mattered to me. I was afraid of them being taken away, my home, my livelihood, all of that. And what God helped me understand is it says, no one who hopes in you will ever be put to shame. No one who hopes in God will ever be put to shame. The question is, where is your hope? Where are you deriving your courage from? Where are you deriving your faith from? What are you placing your trust in? Hope is essentially a composite of courage, faith, and trust. And so I had to be honest, which gets back to what I said before. My hope was in me making it happen, me being able to call people and make stuff happen and all of that. Let me tell y'all something. God is so funny. I have never, ever had a problem getting a job. I've never had a problem. As a matter of fact, every job I've ever had, I've always been recruited by other people. Okay. Since God called me away from corporate, not only have I not been recruited by people, but I would say almost every single deal that I had on the table, whether it was to consult or to advise or anything like that with somebody, they all fell through. They either fell through or they didn't get followed up on or whatever. And I got to a point where I just went before God and I said, God, I place my hope in you. I place my trust in you, so much so that I'm not even going to follow up on anything. I've had people reach out to me and ask me to do stuff with them. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, let's talk about it. I don't follow up with them. I'm not, because what I know is that the season that I'm in right now, the place I'm in right now is a place that is training me in true faith in God. And God has been so faithful. Let me tell you a true story. So, this was back in, I think, 2022. My husband and I, our CPA, told us that after they did all the calculations, told us that we owed the IRS $42,000. Okay, this was 2022. And they told us in 2023 because it was for 2022. And I had decided, I was like, okay, well, I want to go ahead and pay this off because I do not like debt. So I had $40-something thousand in one of our accounts and was planning to go ahead and pay those taxes off. Actually, I think it was in the beginning of this year, the beginning of 2025. I was going to go ahead and pay that off, right? At the end of 2024, mind you, I'm off of anybody's payroll. At the end of 2024, because I'm on my own payroll, our new accountant runs payroll taxes for my ministry because, we got to pay payroll taxes for any compensation I receive from my ministry. So they run the payroll taxes. Turns out payroll taxes, we owed $40,000. So the money I was planning to pay to the IRS for the 2022 taxes is gone because it had to go to pay 2024 taxes, I think. Now, in the middle of my anxiety, my fear, and all of this, right? I'm thinking, Lord, I want to pay these taxes off. We have money in different bank accounts. I have stocks. I have all these things, but I don't want to have to liquidate that stuff. That's why I had cash. And I'm just like, Lord, how are we going to do this? Well, about, I don't know, month and a half ago, my husband goes to check the IRS website and it says that we don't owe any money. Not only that, it says the IRS owes us $5,000. Not only that, we got a check from the IRS for $19,000. And in all of this, God is helping me realize that this whole thing is about me learning to not only trust him, but to rest in him. And so as I tell you my life update and the fact that I'm in full-time entrepreneurship now, I'm building my business, my Inside Out Leadership business. I absolutely love what I get to do. We have a group coaching program called Success Circle, where I have a couple of coaches that partner alongside of me, and we are working with a cohort of women to help them get to a place of emotional and mental, psychological, spiritual, and physical well-being. Like, we get to do this with this cohort of women. I have other programs that are going to be rolling out this year. I'm doing my retreat again this year. I did a one-day intensive called Day to Thrive in Atlanta, and I did that in April. And we're going to be doing another one in Nashville in August. And I'm like seeing how all of this is coming together. And the Lord has helped me also understand that that my goal is to build the world's largest discipleship organization for women who are leading in ministry and marketplace, so that they can lead and change the world from a healthy, fulfilled place. That's what I'm called to do. That's my mission. I realize that right now. And so the fears that I've had that have kind of led me into some of these spaces, I have been able to surrender them to the faithfulness of God, because God has shown me over and over and over again, y'all, even when I tried to make things happen, because I was like, all right, Lord, I don't know where this whole thing is coming from, and I don't see you around here stressing about it, so I'm gonna go ahead and make this happen. God was like, he cut it off. He immediately cut it off. So I'm learning to trust God, and I will say this. I think sometimes people have the idea that if you go into full-time, entrepreneurship or ministry, that's somehow going to free you from pressure. I will tell you that there is still pressure. And the pressure is a little bit different on each side of the house. On the entrepreneurship side, I feel pressure because I want my customers, I want my clients, I want them to feel the value that I want them to receive. Like, I want people to know that every program that we offer, every event that I host, every coaching session that either I or a member of my team has, we are bringing our absolute best to that. I want people, if they spend $1, $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000, $20,000, whatever they spend with us, I want them to feel like that was a great investment that I made, because there was a return that they received. So for me, there is the pressure of creating services and products that are serving people, that are giving them a sense of value. So I take that very, very seriously. One of the things that I am so grateful for is, I do a lot of surveying. I'm a data nerd, and I really, really care about feedback. And so across our different programs and offerings, we do a Net Promoter Score assessment, where we're basically asking people, how likely are you to recommend this thing, whatever it is that you participated in, to recommend this to a friend or a family member. And the Net Promoter Score is essentially on a scale of, I think it's like 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, where anything less than, I think, a 9 or anything less than an 8 is considered a detractor. Somebody who basically is like, I wouldn't recommend it. Our programs in the aggregate out of 10 have an average NPS of 9.4. which means we're delivering incredible value to people, and I appreciate that. On the ministry side, the pressure that I feel is I want God to be pleased. When I stand before an audience of people, I want the Lord to be pleased with my preparation. I want the Lord to be pleased with my delivery. I want him to be pleased with my attitude and my character, the way that I acted in the lead up to that moment, and the way that I behave in the aftermath of that moment. So I'm really vigilant about guarding my heart and my mind against anything that could potentially distract me from that goal. I want to lift him up so that all men and women will be drawn unto him. Even if I'm in a business context, that's what I want. All of my books fall under my ministry umbrella. And so I see those as tools of ministry and hope and healing. And so I just want God to be pleased. So there's still pressure. There's absolutely pressure. And we haven't even talked about the pressure of actually being profitable. There's that whole thing as well. So I think as I look ahead, what I'm thinking about, and I actually, this is actually really great timing because I typically take anywhere from 2 to 3 days every quarter, and I do what I call strategic thinking. It's a time where I look at each component of my life. So Inside Out Leadership, Nona Jones Ministries, our church, our family, myself. I look at each component of my life and I try to figure out, okay, am I serving this well? And if not, what do I need to do over the next quarter, over the next half to serve it better? I'm really, really, really excited about the clarity that I have as it relates to who I'm called to serve. This podcast is part of my purpose. My hope is that the Lord will be glorified. My hope is that people will be inspired. My hope is that as you're listening to my own challenges and what I'm wrestling with, you will understand that even though I may be on a platform, even though I may be privileged to be on a pulpit, y'all, I have the exact same struggles that you do. I still wrestle with fear. I still wrestle with inadequacy and insecurity. But God is teaching me so much about myself and about Him. And so what I'm looking forward to, and I think how you can continue to help me and support me, is I would just love your support around the different programs that I'm offering. If there is anything that I'm doing that you feel could serve you, whether it's becoming a part of Patreon or being a part of one of my, learning cohorts, being at the retreat, all these things, I just want to serve. I truly do. I want to serve you because my goal is I'm in a healthy place right now, but y'all, I have not always been. And I want to help everybody get to the place that I'm in. So I'm looking forward to continuing to shape Inside Out Leadership into the image that God would have me to shape it into. And I would just ask you to be in prayer that I continue to hear the voice of God, make the tough decisions I need to make. I've already had to make some tough decisions for the company. But as it comes to ministry, I'm about to start working on my next book, which is my 5th book. And I would appreciate your prayers for wisdom and clarity and revelation as I get into that, because these are the things that I really, 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 really care about. And so thank you for letting me share my heart today. As I said, this journey has not been perfect, but it has definitely been purposeful. I want to leave you with a scripture that has really been speaking to me, and I hope it speaks to you. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8, it says, "By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going." Listen to me. You may not always know where, but I need you to know who is with you. God made a promise that He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. And so on the other side of your yes, you have a companion in that unknown place, okay? Whether you're in a boardroom, a classroom, or a prayer closet, I need you to know that if God is calling you out of comfort and into purpose, you can trust Him. You can always trust Him. Obedience may not always feel comfortable. It may not always feel secure, but I can assure you that the miracle lives in your yes. So if this episode spoke to you, I would love for you to just share it with somebody who you think needs to hear it. It might be a family member, it might be a friend, it might be a colleague. And if you are stepping into something new, if this is a season of transition for you, I would love to hear from you. So you can either reach out to me through my social media. You can contact me at nonajones.com. Certainly, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can absolutely comment there. If you're watching on Patreon, you can comment as well. And I will tell you, Patreon is really where I engage with people personally. So if you want to ask some questions there, feel free to do so, because we're in this together. We're in this together, and I'm for you. And I want you to know that until next time, God loves you, and so do I. Take care. Hey friend, thank you so much for listening and maybe even watching this episode of The Nona Jones Show. If you enjoyed this conversation, I want to encourage you to become a member of my Patreon community. You see, on Patreon, you're not only going to get full-length episodes of my podcast, but you will also get early access to any new content that I share, including new podcast episodes, sermons, even behind the scenes clips of my travels. And depending on the tier at which you join, you will also be invited to some live Q&A conversations that I have with my Patreon community. So what I want you to do is head over to patreon.com/Nona Not Nora to get signed up today. I want to see you in my community. Thanks for being here.